Just about as close to 3 o'clock as you need to be. Today is November 20th, 2024. We're in the Tom Baker Meeting Room and on Zoom to conduct the Historic Preservation Commission regular meeting. Again, I would like to thank Dakota Media Access for making the remote option and putting this out for people to see. I have muted my phone, I hope, so I suggest the rest of you do as well. If you are at the meeting on Zoom, use your hand feature and you'll be recognized. Annie, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Zenker.
Here.
Commissioner Persley.
Here.
Commissioner Engel.
Here.
Commissioner Jackson.
Here.
Commissioner Swanson.
Here.
Commissioner Nodland.
Here.
Chair Sakerson.
Here.
Did I get everybody?
We're all here. Do we have any meeting information on the agenda? We seem to have this meeting information thing. Is there any update on that? The Historic Preservation Report, is there anything on that we need to deal with now?
Chair Sakerson, Commissioners, there's no additional updates to that. A letter was sent for the previous project just asking for additional information. That one's kind of stalled out right now. It's not approved or denied. It's just there. So that's where we're currently at with that.
All right, thank you. So we will move on to the approval of the minutes of the 16th of October.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any discussion? Commissioner Nodland.
Yes, I would like to make a correction on page 7 of 18 in our packet.
Yes, ma'am.
On the last paragraph, the one that's about the comments that I made.
Yes, ma'am.
It's kind of a mixture of stuff. The section about doing this through the history of police, fire, and EMS could be beneficial was a suggestion that Commissioner Jackson interjected into the middle of mine. So if you could pull that out.
Yes, ma'am.
And then my suggestion was that we partner with, not help integrate the new immigrants into our community, but to partner with them in researching. And it was not just to explore different races, but it was to explore the history of immigrants who are different races, cultures, and that we had done in our timeline. We started finding really interesting things. So I don't know if that makes sense. Yes. But it was basically to change that up from helping new Americans integrate into the community to helping us research the history of immigrants to Bismarck.
Okay, so partner with the New Americans, helping us research.
The history of immigrants who are different races, cultures, and how or why they came to Bismarck.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other corrections? Hearing none then. We had a motion from Commissioner Engel and a second from Commissioner Zenker. So, Danny, you could call.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Persley.
Yes.
Commissioner Zenker.
Yes.
Commissioner Engel.
Yes.
Commissioner Nodland.
Yes.
Commissioner Swanson.
Yeah.
Chair Sakerson.
Yes. All right,
Thank you.
so the minutes have been approved. Moving on to the regular agenda then, we have somebody here that is prepared to speak to us about something that Lauren will set up for us, but I think she may have another meeting coming up, so I wanted to get that called quickly before the rest of the meeting goes on, if
Sure.
that's all right.
Chair Sakerson, Commissioners, thank you. This is a slight amendment to your current agenda. We do have a representative here from HTG Architects, Alicia Fadley. She'd just like to give a quick update on the Provident Building renovation. We had previously looked at this quite some months ago and provided some comments to the county on this renovation. She'd just like to give a quick update on that project. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, good afternoon, Commission. So Alicia Fadley, HTG Architects, we sat down with Amy and Lauren yesterday to kind of walk them through, so I just kind of wanted to give you an update. I won't take too much of your time. So a lot of the renovation to the building will be an interior renovation to kind of relay out all of the spaces for the county's needs as they kind of move all of their offices over there, so there'll be a lot of moving walls around and things. But for some of the historical items that you guys had brought up previously, I just wanted to kind of note and touch on all of those things and kind of how we're preserving them. So all of the marble walls on the first floor, apart from 2 small sections that for kind of ADA purposes of bathrooms and ramps are going to be removed. We were on site with Amy yesterday and kind of pointed those out of, what things would be changing. All of the terrazzo floors are going to remain the same. The windows on the exterior of the building will be replaced, but they're going to have the same kind of look and appearance of the style that you see now, to kind of preserve that historical look. Otherwise, nothing else on the exterior of the building will be changing. We're not changing the brick or adding siding or anything like that. The signage on the building was reviewed, and the Provident building signs that are up there that are not original. If you guys have seen the original photos, if you remember, the original sign was on top of the building, so those are not original. They're very rusted out. They've kind of been deemed a hazard because they could fall at some point. So those are going to be taken down. And once we discover what's behind, we will kind of address, what needs to happen with the finishes of the building once we see what is behind those signs. Other items, the mail chutes will be kept on all of the floors. All of the dumbwaiter systems, the original facades on all the floors will be kept. The interior will be gutted for a new sprinkler system. But on each floor, you'll still kind of see where the dumbwaiter was. Just review my notes, see if we had anything else. There is still discussion on the revolving door. We have reached out to the state to kind of hear their thoughts about that. I know the county has discussed removing it just for security reasons of it being difficult to lock and things like that, but that is still up for discussion, so about removing the revolving door. So, any questions that you have for me?
Thank you, Alicia. And I believe that the discussion yesterday hit that the beacon
Oh, yes.
will
the
remain.
beacon is
That'll be the
staying.
one.
Yes.
As long as this is televised, you might as well get the beacon.
The beacon is staying. It is not being taken down. So that seems to be a hot topic that keeps filtering through the news. So,
Probably a
No
hotter
worries.
topic than the doors.
yeah, yep. So no worries there. So any further questions for the team at HTG that I can answer now, or if I can't answer now, I will get back to you guys on.
Well, I would actually ask John to comment.
No, I've just got one simple one. Is the sprinkler system is just for the shaft, for the old dumbwaiter?
It's that's where the piping is going to go that will service the whole building.
So you are doing the whole
We're
building?
going to do the whole building in a new sprinkler system. Is the current plan. So for the safety of the new occupants in that building.
What's the ceiling in there? Is it still the original?
No, it's been ACT. In some places, there is still original plaster and lath that will have to come down to install new mechanical and electrical systems. But where we have that plaster and lath, like on the first floor, which is kind of that historic entryway, we're going to go back in with a new suspended gyp ceiling that will have the same appearance of what was there.
Is there any asbestos?
There's lots of asbestos in the building that is planned to be removed. So that's another big part. A lot of the mechanical and electrical systems are original to the building and have reached the end of their lifespan. And so a lot of this project is really heavy on the mechanical to kind of get that updated for the comfort and efficiency of the building moving into the next 100 years. That's what we're really trying to forecast, the next 50 to 100 years for the county, of how do we create a building that will last that long and service them well for 100 years to come. So, yeah.
I do remember Blake Dinkins, former commissioner for this board, mentioned because there's always concern about the the entry covering. And he said probably to take that down would require the whole building to come down because it's structurally built into it,
Yeah.
which was interesting information
Yeah.
on that, but it doesn't come down. So people don't need to worry about that. You know,
No.
it's one of the handful of things about that building that people talk about a lot.
No, it's a beautiful, unique building in the community, and we want to preserve that and just try to make the updates really to the interiors that have already been gutted and renovated many times, you know, to just try to streamline that for the county to be able to do their work efficiently. So,
Thank you. Any other questions?
okay.
Well, I appreciate it, and I
you.
appreciate you guys are taking it seriously, that the building is important in a historic sense to people. So thank you. All right. Well, then we will move on back to our regular agenda, and item A, the 2023 Historic Preservation Fund Grant Update.
Chair Sackerson and Commissioners, hopefully this one's a little bit quicker than some of the other ones we have on our agenda today. There are currently 2 remaining projects identified for the remaining funds for the 2023 Historic Preservation Fund Grant. First project involves our walking tour maps. We previously, within the past several months, purchased additional maps for the downtown and cathedral historic districts. Current work for this project is actually creating one for the Highland Acres Historic District. Current budget of $3,000 is still available for these maps. Staff is working and actually has a meeting later this week with the printing company to discuss the layout of these maps, so it is progressing. This is just a quick update on that. No action is required for this item at this time. The second project is the Historic District streetlight banners. We currently have ones up in the Highland Acres Historic District. We have designs ready for the Cathedral Area Historic District. We're just working and waiting on the designs for the Downtown Historic District streetlight banners. A total of $11,800 is currently budgeted for this item. Staff's recommendation for that specific item is just to determine if design services would be required for this item, and to provide direction to staff on next steps for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Nodland.
Chair Saxon and Commissioners, the Downtown Historic District banners, commission or subcommittee has not met, and I haven't done anything, and I will get my act together and get that group together before our next meeting and come up with some recommendations and hopefully will give the staff some direction.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
and
If
I
anybody-
think, yeah, and I think that part of this discussion has been that your subcommittee needs to know that we can access design
Yeah.
money, which I think
For sure.
we've seen is a
Yeah.
good thing to not necessarily be on our drawing tables, but on somebody else's drawing table. So that's just a,
Okay, I will bring that to the
Okay.
subcommittee.
Commissioner Persley.
Chair Sackerson, I'm not sure, when the discussion on all the walking tours and stuff started, but living in Highland Acres, I know that there was always discussion about sidewalks and how much of Highland Acres actually has sidewalks that you would want a walking trail other than just a driving trail, because, a lot of the argument is it wasn't safe because you have to walk in the streets in a lot of places. Is a walking map something that we would want, or is it just something that you would just need a driving map? Now, I don't mean to throw a wrench in anything.
No,
I don't know where it's
and
at,
actually,
but-
we have, that's my subcommittee, so. Yes, we've been considering it as a driving, walking map, just, so it'll be organized sort of in 2 ways because of that. Because there will be areas that we would highlight on that or call out that would be ones that you would really only see if you're walking. So we're trying to figure out exactly how to sort of make a map within a map, because some people will only drive in that neighborhood and some people will walk. And so we want to make sure that we're calling out the places that will be safe to call people's attention to. So, yeah, that's been kind of kicking around. So, thank you for bringing that up, though. Keeps me honest. So, if we have anything more to talk about on those two, or on that, then we can move on to regular agenda item B, the 2024 Historic Preservation Fund Grant Update.
Thank you again, Chair Sakerson and Commissioners. At the last meeting, the Historic Preservation Commission was asked to determine where to allocate the remaining roughly $2,500, which was originally budgeted for the Certified Local Government Conference. It was determined that staff should check with the State Historical Society of North Dakota to see if allocating the funds to the Satchel Page project was allowable. And if so, staff was asked to work with the Bismarck Parks and Recreation District on supporting that endeavor. Staff did reach out to both of those entities per that request at the last meeting. So in speaking with the Bismarck Parks and Recreation District on the project, there was a couple things that were brought up. The Bismarck Parks and Recreation District is currently working on crafting a request for proposals for that project. And they hope that members of the community will start looking at fundraising efforts within the next several months. Might be a little bit difficult with the current holiday season, but potentially after that is when they'll start gearing up for that. There might be an option there for some collaboration. However, it's difficult to know what that would look like at this time, just based on conversations with the state. So speaking of the state, regarding those allowable expenses related to this project, staff found out from the state that the statue would not be eligible for funding through this grant. Additionally, any interpretive signs that could be a potential project item would not be eligible either. They're really only allowable for eligible grant-assisted historic buildings, structures, and archaeological sites. The staff at the state have actually looked at nominating the municipal ballpark whereabouts this statue would be located, and they've recently determined that it would not be eligible. They've even discussed it with different National Register reviewers and the National Park Service within this area and region. So based on that, it means that the inclusion of QR code signs or something similar would not be eligible by itself. Additionally, if this would be included in a larger grouping of QR code signs or something similar throughout Bismarck, that would be funded through this type of grant. The majority of the sites would need to be listed or eligible with the National Register of Historic Places. Only then would it be considered an eligible expense. One note, the state did say that for that project, there is the potential to apply for the Cultural Heritage Grant. The statue and potential signage would potentially be eligible as an expense under that specific grant, but that's kind of outside what this discussion currently is for this item. So based on that information, please provide staff direction on how to utilize the additional $2,500. There's a way I can group it into something else that we're currently doing within this specific grant. That would be an idea, or we can do a different route and staff can look into that further as well.
Thank you, Lauren. Well, rats. Commissioner Persley.
You mentioned that, we've discussed QR codes maybe, and things put around town and historic places as kind of an interpretive places. And this mentions if it's part of a program where the majority is of listed on the historic register, it could possibly qualify. So it's a matter of, if we identify 20 sites, if 3 of them don't necessarily reach that, fall under that, would those be eligible for funding since they're part of a larger group?
As in, like the talking trail sites, if we added, we have 20 or whatever we have, and we added a couple months, is that the sort of, Commissioner Nomland?
We don't currently have a QR code
We don't have
project
it, yeah, we don't
or
have a project.
proposed, but if we do in the future, yeah, that would be a good one.
But we don't have one at this point. So we can't add that money to that, but we can look at that. I mean, this fundraising for the whole Satchel Paige thing and the ballpark is going to be going on for some time, I think, in general. So, if we can catch part of it and help it with one of the ways we can, that's maybe a next discussion, not today. Commissioner Nodland.
Chair Sakerson. I guess one of my questions would be if we had intended to do something to honor or educate the public about Satchel Paige, maybe between what Commissioner Jackson and what Commissioner Persley have written about baseball. One of my questions would be is what is going to be shared right now with the public at these games, and if we printed a brochure of Satchel Paige history that was available, or that could go into the stuff into their flyers, or it could be available to the public. I mean, maybe that could be used. That cost could be used for printing, because I think that's written. Haven't you written, Tori? Haven't you written a lot of that already for part of our timeline project? And so, I mean, that would be one way we could, I mean, that seems like that's a history of Bismarck publication. If the HBC did like a 3-page or 4-page brochure on his history, that would be available everywhere. I mean, that might be one way to make it about Satchel Paige and contribute. I'm not writing it, but.
Well, if it could include the history of the development of the ballpark itself, because it's been there in that location forever, even if it's got different grass and different lands, it's still the location is not really changed.
If I may,
Commissioner Persley.
Satchel Paige is part of a larger, historical relevance from Bismarck, being the first integrated team, to play, where black and white players could play together, and they won the national championship, and he was part of that team, and it's not just historically significant here. That's kind of something big that's historically significant all across the country. And how many people actually know that? That one of the first professional type teams like that was right here in Bismarck. And it could all go together when you talk brochure. It doesn't have to just be Satchel Paige, but there's a lot of Negro League All-Stars and Hall of Famers who are on that team.
Commissioner Nodland.
But it's $2,500, right? So if it were $2,500 for printing, and the writing was donated, and I mean, I don't know if you have photo access or any of that stuff. I mean, maybe that's something. By the time that such statue is up, and they're celebrating, isn't his anniversary coming up?
Next summer's the 90th anniversary of the 1935 championship team. So we have some things that we wrote for the timeline. I've got other things that I've written. I don't remember if we had anything about the history of the ballpark in the timeline, but I know it's out there somewhere. That's pretty easily. And then photos are fairly easy to track down. So I think that could be put together fairly easily, as long as, $2,500 covers the printing cost.
Would that be something you think they'd approve?
Well, I can't imagine why they wouldn't in this case, but Lauren?
Chair Sakerson, Commissioners, I can check with the state to see. We've done similar brochures, but those have related to National Register areas already. I can see if this would be by itself eligible, or if there's a way to possibly integrate it with other aspects. of Bismarck.
The-
I can look into that and see if it's an eligible
Because the one thing I would argue with the state a little bit, especially if we were focusing on the historic aspects of the teams that played here, of Satchel Paige himself, on the National Register of Historic Places, a place can be eligible because it is associated with a person of fame as well. It doesn't have to be a structure, it can be a person. So I would argue that we could argue
Yeah. Yeah, it's not
That-
associated with the place, it's associated with the history of Bismarck.
That's the big picture is
Yeah,
national.
yeah.
yeah. We don't have to use the brochure there, but we can use the brochure all over Bismarck and in the schools and everywhere, anywhere, and online. I mean, it's just a history of an important period and person in Bismarck's past.
But it is timely.
It's timely with it, yeah.
So I guess I'm a little confused why all of this is tied to eligibility and the National Register. I mean, we use these kind of funds for all sorts of projects that have nothing to do with a district or a specific historic structure. So I guess I don't know why that's the hang-up. I don't quite get that.
I think
I mean, I
it's-
guess I understand for using the money for a statue, they want it only at an eligible structure or building. I don't understand where that comes from.
I
Why is
think-
that even a
I think
consideration?
it's the what kind of stuff you can match with what. I think maybe there's a,
Like, we used HPF funds for the timeline. The timeline's not tied to a specific historic district or it has nothing to do with eligibility or the National Register. We're doing those send kits. Those have nothing to do with the National Register or eligibility. I just don't understand why, for this particular use, all of a sudden, it has to have some sort of tie to the National Register and eligibility. I guess I don't know where that comes from.
I could be wrong, but my understanding based on the conversation I had was that the location of where you would be putting those signs, it's more of a physical aspect, whereas when you have your timeline books and whatever, it's easier to distribute and stuff. I could be wrong. I could discuss it further with the state on those requirements, but I think some of the requirements also come down from the actual Historic Preservation Fund grant. CLG has a little bit of leeway sometimes with some of the things, but that grant actually has like a wider range than just the CLG. It's available to other entities as well, and there's not stricter, but there's more detailed requirements with that specifically than what the CLG is given for this, so.
it might be worth having Amy Munson come in the next few months or something and chat us up on all that so that we actually know where we are, because there are going to be things that come up, as this came up, all of a sudden something's not eligible, or things, so we aren't seeing a logical particular reason. And so I guess we need to have somebody who is the one who signs the and distributes the money, tell us what rules she's bound by and which things are that, so we can plan our projects better, knowing what we might be able to, not waste time on something that we can't get through, can't do or use any funds, or after we've already spent, 6 months talking about it. So let's see if we can get Amy in and ask some questions to her. Commissioner Engel.
Thank you, Chair Sack. I would also ask that the clarification be made from the state if the objection to it being listed was by criterion C, that the ball field itself was not eligible, because I would think through the connection with Satchel Paige that it would be potentially, and the Negro League would be potentially eligible under A or B.
Well, and Neil Churchill.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did they play at that field?
yes.
The ballpark's always been in that location. It's
Yeah.
just been reversed. Home plate used to be up on the northeast corner.
There was, but
Balls that get
this
cars
is-
coming,
Yeah.
and the horses.
So yes, it does seem as if we've got some information we need to get clear on. So if we can ask Lauren maybe to set up a conversation with Amy Munson in the next couple of months, would that be something we think would be useful?
I can do that. Thank
Okay,
you.
so we can't spend that money there until we would find that out, and we probably need to spend it before. How soon do we have to have that money spent? Before we get a chat with Amy or not?
That money is for the 2024 grant, so we have plenty of time on it. It's just making sure that we're aware of our priorities for those projects, so.
There is a certain amount of appeal in the brochure idea, because again, that has a larger distribution, and one of the things that any dabbling in historic preservation that a community does is heritage tourism. And so if you have information, I mean, people travel all over to look at our buildings that are Art Deco. They travel here to hear about Custer or, Fort Lincoln or all these things. But also people travel to visit historic hotels or things that are associated with people like Satchel Paige, like baseball history. So this would be something that would be tag on to an encouragement for people that we actually would hope to stop here and spend another night or two and get some information pick up information that they'd like. Commissioner Pursley.
One more thing, if I may. At the ballpark already, you have interpretive signage that discusses the historical aspects of the baseball in Bismarck. That's already there. Would it matter if this was part of that, where, we already have, it's almost like a mini museum type thing. If you go to a ball game, you can sit and see the history of Bismarck baseball, and this would be another part of that. Would that be something that, this is already there, it's already historical, this is another addition to it?
I can't answer that. Lauren?
Based on the conversation with the state, since they
say
determined
no.
that it's not eligible, they wouldn't allow interpretive signage as an allowable expense through this grant. If we're not using the grant funds, that would definitely be a project we can work on, but it's finding that funding.
Okay. Well, and there was that note of the Cultural Heritage Grant, so maybe that's something that we can explore a little bit. But, so, are we going to just wait on that 2,500 until we get some clarification on things, or do we have any kind of a motion? I see Commissioner Swanson.
I think we should just get confirmation, but I think it sounds like a good idea, the brochure idea, it sounds good to me, but.
Well, maybe the people who would actually do it would need to say if they would do it, if we're not.
Yeah, I'd help put it, if we can actually do it and the state will allow it, I'd help put it together.
All right, so perhaps is that enough to get you what you need? We don't need to have a motion on this one?
There's no
I wouldn't
motion
think?
on this
Okay.
for right now,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll get you back to you on that.
But everybody, I do like the idea of a brochure. It makes a lot of sense, follows through with one of the things that we're good at doing, which is words.
Send it to ESPN and, I mean, seriously, it's
Oh, yeah.
a big deal,
Yeah.
It's national.
All right, so we have sort of a working idea on that. And we will move on then to item C, the identification of the 2025 Historic Preservation Fund grant projects.
Chair Sackerson and Commissioners, at the October meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission, you identified and prioritized several projects that we could look into for budgets and viability to include within a draft of the 2025 Historic Preservation Fund grant application. Those projects included an update and survey of the downtown historic district and surrounding area, graphic design services for the historic preservation plan, potential collaboration in some way with the Bismarck Parks and Recreation District, potentially on historic interpretive material or other options. Plaques and awards for the Historic Preservation Award, and material development involving the history of emergency services, so Bismarck Police, Fire, Dispatch, Corrections, and EMS service, emergency medical services. Potential cost considerations for these items were included in your packet. They should be laid out within 5 different items for each of the items there. Just a reminder, the grant will require a 40% match. That was not included within this item. Staff basically looked at what the full cost would be, so there might be a way to work some of that cost into donated labor, or potentially looking at finding a match or something like that. But that's just something to keep in mind as we're looking at budgets for this. The first item was the update survey of the downtown historic district. There's currently 77 parcels within the current boundaries of the downtown district. Staff looked and identified an additional 62 parcels that have similar uses in context to those currently within the boundary. A draft of that potential area is provided in the agenda packet towards the end of this item. Several of these parcels, both within the current historic district boundary and those that haven't been surveyed, are parking lots, which would likely not require much work within the actual survey. The parcels identified for a Class 3 intensive survey, those would be those additional 62, are only potential options, and those can be updated or adjusted. They're only there as a reference, and like I said, they can be adjusted. Staff has discussed this item just briefly with the state, specifically Lorna Meininger, who kind of works through this. She suggested that properties within the current boundary of the historic district would just need to be updated, and the area around the district should have a Class 3 intensive survey, so that's really getting all that information that you would potentially look to do a National Register nomination with. Based on current pricing, staff's looked at previous projects, both within the area and the region, previous ones we've done as well. Estimated a cost of about $250 per parcel. With that in mind, staff would recommend an estimated budget based on the number of parcels identified at around $34,500. As I said, this could potentially be lowered based on donated labor or other donated funds if possible. The second item is graphic design services for the historic preservation plan. The costs identified for this were just based on previous projects and research. So about $135 per hour, potentially about 200 hours, give or take. Potential administrative costs regarding different meetings and whatnot. There's currently around 33 pages within the draft of the historic preservation plan, just based on some items that need to be added and additional details put in. Approximately 40 pages for that document that would need to be designed per se. Based on that information, staff would recommend an estimated budget of about $28,000 for that project. The third item is potential collaboration. Just based on our last agenda item for this meeting, there's some additional information that would be needed to determine what specific projects with the parks you would like to do, and how and if those projects would be eligible. There are current parks that are eligible within the community, so that might be an aspect to look into for a potential project there. However, staff, as I said, would need additional information on the potential areas for this type of project and what type of project activities you would like conducted with that. The fourth item regards plaques and awards for the Historic Preservation Award. There's two different tables within your agenda packet. One is for a perpetual award, similar to kind of what's behind you. If you can look at that, sorry. Bad example, but that's basically what's a perpetual award. Your different plates get updated each year, and it stays in one place, not really given to anybody else. It would stay with the Community Development Department for the Historic Preservation Commission. So some of those different items regarding the size, number of plates, and average price per plaque are included within a table there. The second table is for different pricing of certificates to be given to the recipient. These were all based on pricing from local award stores within Bismarck and averaging those costs between both expensive and non-expensive options for each item. So it's definitely an average for those. Based on the information provided there, staff would recommend an estimated budget for that item of about $550 for 1 year of that project. The cost potentially to update those plates each year for that perpetual award is about between $5 to $20 each. It just depends on where you're going for getting those engravings done.
And how long the name is.
Yes. The fifth item is the material development for the History of Emergency Services in Bismarck. Based on the discussion at the last meeting, ideas related to this project would mainly include research prior to any events, items, or activities being produced. This research would include education, training, equipment, perhaps maybe identifying and showing how equipment's used to the public, different communications and community outreach. It could provide an opportunity to partner with other city departments, an idea of potential ideas with potential budget considerations are also kind of noted for that item, and this could include community discussion events, research fees if we're going through the archives and we're not able to do it ourselves or they need to look more in depth. There's the pricing for what they have just based on what they have online for that service. Obtaining high quality photos from the archives, that cost is there as well. Additional items that you could look into is creating a story map or other similar item to provide and disseminate that information to the public right away, rather than doing the research and holding off on doing anything with that until a later project. So staff recommends reviewing the information provided and direct staff on which items to include in the draft. A draft of the application will be provided to you at your next meeting for review and discussion.
Thank you, Lauren. Anybody have any questions for Lauren? Well. Commissioner Nodland?
Chair Sakerson and Lauren, I have a question on number 3. You said that we could only spend the money, would only be eligible for grant-assisted historic buildings. What does that mean? The grant-assisted part.
I'm wondering that's basically kind of taking word for word what they're telling me. My thought is that it's previously funded buildings that used historic preservation funds or other similar funds to restore, maybe rehabilitate buildings. I could be wrong. That could be an additional question to ask the state on that eligible expense.
Could you ask her? Because there's a lot of buildings that have not, most have not had grants.
But almost none.
Yeah.
Commissioner Zenker?
Chair Sakerson, Lauren, would that include RZ funding? I mean, because really, you get a tax break for those 5 years. It might not be a written check as a grant, but it is forgiving of property taxes for 5 years on the structure of the building.
It's potential. I think it could be. I know the RZ funding or tax relief portion is, in a sense, one of the historic preservation tax credits for our state. It basically takes the place of that, so it could be a potential item. I didn't ask for clarification on that specific wording there, which I definitely can.
Very good point. So you've got quite a list of things to ask clarification about, but you you have to make decisions based on fact. Yes, Commissioner Nodland.
I have, so one of my questions for the first one, for the update of the downtown historic district is, and from looking at the other map, I think a lot of the buildings that are currently in the boundaries of it, like Lorna has said, there have been quite a number of them that have become historic since that last survey was done. So in addition to most being updated, there's quite a few that are going to need to be, I guess that it's more than just a revisit. They're going to need to be
More thoroughly
More
recorded,
yeah.
because they will have been recorded to some level, but not.
Yeah. And I like that she mentions that the Class 3 survey needs to be done in an expanded area around it. And one of the things I noticed on your map is nothing goes on the south side of the railroad track. And there are some warehousing buildings and some buildings that are just on the south side of the track. So I don't know if the railroad track is some kind of magic line that we can't cross for downtown. But I think if we're going to do this where we not only deal with what we already have, but do the surveys to expand it, then our survey can go where it needs to go to capture the historic buildings that are
Within the same, yeah.
within the same time periods.
It is true, there are several on the
Just on the
south
south
of
side
the south of the tracks, including the Walker Warehouse, which has been redone, but the building, there's some buildings just, if you have just crossed the tracks going south on 3rd, on the west, there's
Where
some.
Borrowed Bucks was, or
No, across the street from Borrowed Bucks. I mean, down on the south of. Front.
Buffalo Wild Wings was a refurbished building.
Right, and yeah, there's some buildings that are right along there that you don't really
Choice Financial.
think of because you don't go in them much.
yeah, if they're 50
So,
years old, then
Yep, and the one that Cardin's
yeah.
frame shop, yeah.
So
Well, if
this-
you go all the way
this-
down there, yeah, it's a lot, they're a lot.
This Class 3 survey can kind of capture what really is the downtown area, not using the arbitrary railroad line as the,
Because it really is an arbitrary line. I mean, it's always been,
It used to be the spine of the community.
yeah, you're exactly.
but even then,
well
people
put.
lived on the south side and worked, and there were structures, yeah, so.
Well, but, you look now and you see, oh, there are warehouses largely on the south. Well, no, there weren't. There were warehouses on the north of the tracks, too. The Anderson Building is one of them, and then all the ones, like by McDonald's and that, those were the grocery warehouses, so.
I think we can define that in a Class 3
Yeah,
RFP.
yeah.
So this 34,000 looks like, to me, it looks like, I mean, that's what, looks like the right thing to put in there as one. I would say that one.
So,
Yeah,
You know,
I think that one
the
looks
first one looks good.
yeah.
We can define it later
Right,
with the State Historic Preservation Office,
Part of the grant application will be looking at least providing some sort of potential boundaries, so we can identify it later as we've done in a previous one for expanding it south through
couple blocks.
So
just a
through
couple
front,
blocks.
yeah. And there's some big, actually, fairly big history that got, well, at any rate.
And it's the Class 3 survey. It doesn't necessarily mean
digress.
something is going to prove to be there, but it at least takes into account where the economic and residential activity's been happening since Bismarck formed.
Yeah.
So we'll find it or we won't. But
Yeah, but from Sweet and Bowen on up there, which is contiguous, and people live there because they work downtown, so that connection can perhaps be established. through this, which would be good.
Chair Sackerson.
Commissioner Notland.
I'm going to say on the second one, I'm kind of shocked. I don't understand how a 40-page document could take $28,000 to design. And I don't, if it's mostly text, I'm in shock, and so I guess I would say that to me looks like, I would like to understand that better. Because does that seem unusual to anybody else?
I agree with you. I thought that was a pretty high number.
So that's fine. Like I said, just initial budgeting. I did talk to some of the previous people, specifically Marketing Works that we had previously worked with, and their item for the service per hour was in there, and then I discussed with Blake on how long it took him potentially to work through the Bismarck timeline. I am aware that that is a completely different avenue, and I did cut the hours down on that as well. We can relook at that or reevaluate as well.
How many copies do we usually?
This is just design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't
Oh,
printing.
Oh, this isn't the production.
No, this is just the design of it.
Is it design heavy, or is it just is it just?
I wouldn't think it is, but I don't know, I guess.
I would ask if the city has any other 40-page booklet that they've designed, and what is that budget been? And then, or to take a copy of some other cities to a printer and say, what would this cost to mock up for design for us? Because that just seems, I don't know.
Commissioner Engel.
Thank you, Chair Sackerson and Commission. I am not going to defend the cost of this because I don't know anything about design itself. However, I would like to say that this commission has been known for very text-heavy things. We were going for something that's a little bit more interactive and a little bit more catchy for the general public, and a lot of resources so that you're presenting materials in different ways for owners, that landowners are trying to find grant funding, people that are trying to research stuff. So there's going to be a lot of layering and popping and making it more user-friendly and accessible, which is more than we just, here's your giant pile of paper and read through it at your will. Also, I would say that this would be a prime candidate. I would think that if we could get somebody to donate labor, if we could partner with one of those firms to say, we can pay you at a reduced cost or like reduced hours, and then they could, I don't know, something else so that we don't have to pay the $28K because that's a lot.
Did you get a bid for that?
It was based off of Lauren's research on how much it costs per hour.
Commissioner Pursley.
Is this, can this board or commission issue an RFP to people to respond for that, to see what it would cost to lay them out? I know people who lay out things for $100 a page professionally, and that would come. Yeah, so it's like, maybe it's something you put out for bids.
Which we would. This is just for
would,
budgeting
yeah.
purposes.
We would.
Yeah, if we were.
To
And
ask
we
for
have
funding.
gotten bids prior to these grant submissions, before we've gone to printers and designers for previous projects and said what we can get, got a couple of bids so that we knew in general what we were going to put in these grant requests. So we could get a bid or two to see, but it seems like it'd be worth it.
Yeah, I also am surprised by that, though I know everything is much more sophisticated in how it's presented or can be presented, and with sophistication, digital or whatever, comes an increased cost. But even given that seems pretty chubby to me, and I think we seem to be largely in agreement that we would like to be a little bit more careful with determining a budget for that. Have some more information on that before we decide how we would want to proceed.
Chair Sackerson and Commission, what kind of ballpark would you have thought before you saw the $28,000 estimate? What kind of we talking double what you thought it was going to come in at? Okay.
Yeah.
That's just, you know, and we are not, I think, any of us, as knowledgeable about what goes into this, which
And
is why we are looking at someone do it.
If Commissioner Persley said that he knows people who could do $100 a page, this is $700 a page. And so, I mean, that if just that might, if it were a seventh of that, you know, I mean, that, I don't know what the current rate is, but we could go out, let's go ask a designer and get a bid.
But could we design an RFP and could we agree to have an RFP done so that we could see? Or,
The person that I know I live with, that's her job, is graphic design. So it's kind of like, and I know that stuff that we've worked on at my office, you know, that's where it comes in at. Depending on your design and the time it takes, if you want it like designed like the timeline book, where there's a lot of design heavy, it would be more time. But if it's, let's make it look better, but get the general information about our plan out there for people, it wouldn't seem to take that long, but then again, I'm not a professional designer.
When is the grant due?
So it typically comes out in January and it's submitted by mid-February. It has to get approval from this commission as well as the city commission before we can apply.
So Lauren, short of doing like a full RFP to try and gauge this cost, can we just
I
like
can reach out to
more
additional,
unofficially?
additional printing companies and maybe look at some independent contractors who do graphic design services and see what they would have to say for this.
I might suggest that you would contact another city that has a pretty active historic preservation website. I know Bozeman has a very active one. I've used it. It's more in line what it works the way you want it to work, and that it's not stupid, it's not boring to work with, it's easy enough to work with, and it would be, but I've not looked at this type of plan that they've done, but that's a source I know, and I think Grand Forks might also have a source of how they've done it, that we might not reinvent the wheel.
How would you describe this to somebody, I mean, to a bidder? I mean, how would you get the information to them?
That was going to be my question. Did you guys see any plans at your conference that you went to in Florida? Did you have any examples that you could use as a template?
I don't, but I know when you're looking at the budget for this, when you've got like, whatever you come up with for design, you're still gonna have to come up with money for printing, no matter how many costs it's on top of that, so, and that is gonna depend on, what kind of coverage, what kind of stock you use, that kind of stuff, how many you print, so that's an additional cost, but just for the design, I didn't see anything down there that said, we just printed this many pages for this much, anything like that, but.
Well, I think we would like to direct Lauren to see if she can find some people who have had experience having somebody produce this sort of thing, so that we have a ballpark of what somebody else has paid, and then we can perhaps look at changing exactly how much we want it to do.
I've seen them on the internet. I mean, they're reasonably easy to look up.
Other cities.
We've all looked at over the last number of years, we've all looked at examples, from other cities of what their plan looks like. So if we needed to share, like if there was one that this is kind of what we're thinking, we could share that with a potential designer, I think.
Yeah. I would like to add, though, that since this is for budgeting purposes, I'd like to have a little bit of a cushion because it's way easier to reallocate those funds elsewhere than to be short on a project and not be able to afford what we need to cover that project. So that's all. Whether that's $28,000 or not, no.
Commissioner Nauman.
Chair Sakerson and Commissioners, I was going to ask the subcommittee members if they had considered putting are you going to print this? Do we need printing costs in there? Or is it going to all be just online?
I think it was going to just be all mostly online, and then we were going to do maybe a flyer to get the public to know about it. And apparently I'm a big fan of QR codes, because that's probably what I would do to direct people to the.
Are those costs in here?
I think that would be part of the, just design is to QR code the flyer based off of the front page or whatever
Is
of the
printing
plan.
flyer costs in here?
No printing costs in here. It's just design.
Would that be housed on our website then, once it's done and it's online? Is that where the link
Yes.
would be too? Okay.
Yes, that's where it would be. So I think we're ready to ask more questions than we are to give I guess our direction is we need to do some more work before we determine where we are for the,
Would you still like me doing the research? Would you still like me to draft this as
Include
an
that-
item in the app? Okay.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
it has always been our intention that we get this dealt with. And so that hasn't changed. It's just whether this is exactly the ballpark of where we want to be with it. Does anybody have any questions about, well, we've already talked about the potential collaboration with Parks and Rec, sort of. We've already had that sort of explained off our list here. Or substituted down the road with doing a brochure. As far as the plaques and awards for the Historic Preservation Award goes, I think that budget looks,
I think it looks fine, except there
Fine.
might be a little design time in the front end that's not accounted for. I mean, are we gonna do something like this back here where there's a banner type title
Where there's
across
a-
the top, or we simply use that?
I think,
Subtitle,
yeah, I think we just
Subtitle.
use how we do the,
we don't wanna go through any standard,
I don't know, I think we're fine with them
That,
looking.
something like that.
Something like that with the Historic Preservation Commission on there, because that's really what it is. We don't need to be,
Dakota Awards
will
will probably do that, or whoever we go to.
yeah. They know how, I'm sure they know how to do that.
I agree that the cost seems reasonable to me and the plan. I did have a question about if we're sending these to the individuals on the commission, are we doing it at the end of their term, or are we doing it yearly? Because for those of you who have been on it for, that's a lot of years of the same plaque coming to, or, padded holder thing. So I don't know. I was just curious.
How do they do it on the other plaques in the city? Like if
Lauren has an answer for us.
Chair Sakerson, Commissioners, for clarification, this is for the Historic Preservation Award, so we had talked about this previously. There wouldn't be certificates for you guys, I'm sorry.
No.
But this would be for award recipients. Just clarification on that.
Thank you for that, Lauren. I forgot. Sorry.
So, are there, and I know that with the state, when they have awarded for historic districts, individual certificates for a house being on the state or the National Register, it goes out just this way. The one thing I would think we would probably have to, it's not a big deal because this isn't going to cost that much, but I know that there were so many when the state sent certificates out, they didn't have a mailing budget. And so I spent the next 5 years running around trying to find people home to hand them their certificates. But this isn't that case. But when we're doing a large project like that, one would have to make sure that their mailing budget was included. Commissioner Nodland.
Chair Saxon and Lauren, I have a question. How many awards have we propose to give out per year, is at most?
3?
At most per year, there's 3 eligible areas where somebody could be nominated, so each year there would be 3 awards
Okay.
maximum.
So then on the plaque, because I can't see it from where I am, but if we have the one perpetual plaque, are the 3 individual awards going to be up there and then we're going to engrave names under those? Or are we going to have 3 each year? So,
Oh, you mean, do you want to, are you saying, is there a separate plaque for each category, or are they, I think it'd be by year, don't you?
Yeah.
is there a
Yeah.
separate
You can have a bar.
Yeah, they're separate.
You can
per
have
year?
it.
So
That's
then
for
do we,
each
if,
commissioner
how,
per
this is
year.
a 2-year grant or a 3-year grant?
Typically 3 years.
So then do we need to account for 3 years of awards?
We kind of, if you'd like to cover it through the whole grant and you're thinking of doing it for each
But there
of the
may be
3
a year
years.
we don't actually,
But we might
have
as-
one,
but-
so-
But if we
Cover
do,
all.
let's
Yeah.
cover it. Let's ask for 3 years, so 9 individual
that's a good
awards.
point.
Yeah.
And
That's a
then,
good
and then
point.
we've got it if we do it. And if we don't, then we have it and
Times 3. Yeah,
it's a
that's,
3-year award, right?
yeah,
Okay.
that's a good, so that'd be 1,500 then
Yeah.
for that. Commissioner Engel?
The one perpetual plaque is a
Oh,
one-time
that's
cost,
just,
Yeah, yeah.
so.
right,
One
Yeah.
time.
right, blit, that's right,
So cheap.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Good point. Well, whatever, just say make 9.
Somebody else will do the math. I have a calculator here, but
1650, 3 years. Yeah.
It won't be that much.
no,
though,
it won't be that much
the-
because the plaque
perpetual plaque is the
stays, so
biggest.
it'd just be the, yeah.
But at least then we're accounting for it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think $180 for 3 nameplates. If
See?
it's $20.
He's fast in
Social
math.
sciences.
You go now?
Yeah, there's got to be somebody there driving the boat. So that looks good. So let's discuss 5, the material development involving the history of the emergency services. Any questions on, discussion on that? Whether, because we have to,
I have a question.
yes, Commissioner Nodland.
So it feels like this is a planning, we're in a planning stage at this point, but if it is 3 years, then, like, I know that the Bismarck Historical Society has been recording people's interviews at a quality level, and there's costs associated with that, and so that might be a budget item. And then, does the story map cost something? Is there a budget amount with that?
It's mainly donated labor and upkeep with the GIS, but that's typically
Okay.
covered under GIS services. We tend to do story maps for a lot of different things.
Okay. And then if there are costs with the events, like I don't know if Dakota Media Access would be the group recording the stories, or if there are events and there are interviews at those events. And then the research fees. I guess I wondered if we're in a planning stage, is this a bigger project, a research project that kind of needs a overarching person to do it, like you, or firm, like you would do, or is this a group volunteer project again? Because if we're going to pay $25 an hour for research at the archives, I mean, maybe that's a different thing that we put out an RFP for and hire somebody to do. I guess if we're trying to get to a budget number to ask for, it's like there's some money, there's some expenses attached to these bullet items.
Commissioner Nodland, Chair Commissioners. So the reason that I included that research fee from the archives, that's if we don't have an idea of what we're looking for and they can start pulling out broader topics so we can narrow it down. If we have an idea of certain things that we're looking for, that would potentially cut that cost, and that would be more of a going to the archives and doing some research if needed. So that was provided, and there is that option, but yes, to your point, that could be a potential area to look at.
Yeah, and I guess my question is who is going to coordinate all of this in these events? Is this something that we're going to ask the staff to do, or is there somebody on the commission who's going to kind of herd the cats? Or is this something that we need to make into a formal project?
In some ways, though, it's obviously on our priority list here, that has less form at this point. I'm a little less comfortable with it in some ways because it's not, it's all a little more vague than, for its purpose. I mean, it's almost as if what you would really be wanting to look for here is not just developing the history. There should be a point. I mean, there's a product. Either culminates with an event or something like that. But this doesn't have. This isn't fleshed out enough in what we would be going for, what we'd be looking for in this. So it seems to have, to me, this one is seems a little shaky in its definition to me. I like the idea that this is an area of a community's history that's worthy of capturing. But I'm not sure without having yet another subcommittee how we get to a project that we could actually figure a budget for, because you can't really figure a budget for anything. I mean, you could easily ask for $10,000 and work with that and get something presentable with that. But I'm not sure that we are catching the thread of it as we should be, for actually knowing how much money we could ask for or should ask for. Commissioner Nodland.
Chair Zackerson, what's the word, there's like a development, there's a planning stage. And so, I mean, it would seem to me like we should talk to the fire, the police, and corrections and dispatch, and what do they want, and what do they have, and what do they, and so we're in a planning stage. So can we reconfigure this as, a little more preliminary, and to try and organize this, but then have some resources that would cover some staff time and maybe if these community discussion events, I mean, is that like 3 or 5 or so? But I mean, I'm just trying to think of a way to kind of reel it back a little bit and do it as.
So what you might be suggesting here is that in this category, what we would ask for is concept development money, which could cover some research time and some things like that, so that you get a basic history of a basic outline of what the history exists.
Yeah.
And then after that, develop a plan to coordinate with these people, which doesn't cost particularly money, but you have to do it. But I think we have to be armed with information before we go talking to anybody, so we know who we should be getting the information from, where those areas, because oftentimes these places do not necessarily know where that information is. It may not be kept on site. It may be in the archives. I think we need some research. Maybe this is a research dollar amount we ask for to see what we could develop out of that, what sort of a program we could develop. Commissioner Engel.
Thank you, Chair Sackerson. I know of a firm out of Colorado called Community Connections, and they kind of plan events like this to have outreach with smaller groups, compile information, do that kind of planning, but also get the word out about these kind of events to get more participation. So if we could explore maybe talking to those groups or putting out some, I don't know, a call to help, those sorts of things. Might mean a little bit money up front, but we might get a better participation and then a better plan to get through these steps.
And are there groups like that in Bismarck, similar?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I just know the people out of Denver.
So, from a research standpoint, I mean, how to develop and structure what we're actually looking to do, should we just say, let's ask for $4,000, do some research, do some stuff, see if we need to ask other communities to give us examples or to show us how they may have conducted a similar project. If we don't end up using, if we get the money and we don't end up using it, they seem to be quite happy to let us reallocate some of those monies to other parts of what we have asked for. So would that be something that would be concrete enough?
I hate to say this, but you could call it a concept that you're developing. I mean,
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is.
of a plan. How are
This
you
is a
going to
concept.
get to your plan
Yep.
if you don't have that concept of what it is you really want to say or do?
So if we ask for some money for concept development,
Right.
say, throw out what we think we might be able to get or use, Lauren? Is that
I will
I'm-
check and see if that's even eligible
Eligible.
for the
well,
money.
it should be. It really should be, because it's research.
Sure, it is. It's part of the planning process.
I'm-
Most people
but-
go through. You have to establish what it is
Yes,
where you're
Commissioner,
going and what you've got.
Commissioner Jackson.
I'm inclined to just drop this completely from our grant application. I don't think this is anywhere near project status where we need money for this specific cost for this project. I don't think we're anywhere close. And I think going to the state and saying we want $4,000 to screw around and think about what we might want to do seems kind of ridiculous. That's my thought.
I would agree.
I would agree.
I would agree.
You could have said that 20 minutes ago.
It was formulating. Yeah.
See it spinning there.
Can't always get it there. All right, so we've clunked that one off for now. So we've given, Lauren is back up here, thank you.
On to our last item, just really quick. No action is needed from you at this time. So we're going to start trying to look at our bylaws every year, even if we're not amending them. However, with this item, we are looking to amend the bylaws. So it is provided here based on the requirements that are currently within the bylaws for amending. So staff has proposed a couple adjustments within the current bylaws for the Historic Preservation Commission. These include appointment information, qualifications, compensation, and the amendment of the bylaws. Most of this information is noted within our CLG agreement or our ordinance. It's already there. It's just making sure it's noted within the bylaws for this commission. Additionally, based on the current bylaws, amendments to them should be introduced in writing at least 17 days prior to a regular meeting of the commission. The inclusion of this item here is to provide the amendment at least 17 days prior to a regular meeting of the commission. This item will then be placed on their regular agenda at next commission's meeting. So it's only for that notice requirement for this amendment. As I said, no actions required today. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I don't, we have the update on the bylaws. And I don't see anybody out here, so do we have, I believe we have everything we need for me to adjourn the meeting until next month. what is going to be our date? December? I had last year's calendar when I was looking at it.
There's a mistake within the agenda. The next scheduled meeting date should be December 17th, I believe.
December 17th?
Yeah.
It's gotta be an
18th.
18th, excuse me, December 18th, excuse me.
Okay, all right. So I believe we are adjourned. Thank you.